Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Abdurrahim Kashur, and these are tonight's headlines of the L24 English News Edition. ECOWAS chiefs continue their meeting for the second day in a row, warning that the option of a possible military intervention has been taken and put on the agenda. Palestinian Authority exposes the crimes of the occupation through 3 identical messages presented by representative to the United Nations Riyad Mansour to the 3 UN bodies. Russian Ministry of Defense announces the shooting down of Ukrainian drone that targeted the capital Moscow, and Washington gives the green light for the delivery of the F-16 fighters to Kiev. Beijing affirms that its joint patrols with the Russian Navy are in line with international law and calls for maintaining security and stability in the Pacific region. Hello again and welcome. West Africa's main regional bloc ECOWAS has agreed a D-Day for a possible military intervention to restore democracy in Niger if diplomatic efforts fail. ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security Abdel Fattah Moussa said on Friday, without disclosing when that is. The Commissioner made the comments at the end of the 2-day meeting of the West African Army chiefs in Ghana's capital, Accra, where they have been hashing out the logistics and strategy for a possible use of force in Niger that ECOWAS has said would be a last resort.
We've already agreed and fine-tuned what will be required for the intervention. The strategic lift capacity, what the strategic objectives are, equipment needed, the commitment of member states, which was very, very, very encouraging. All member states of ECOWAS present here today have all committed elements. They have committed their own equipment. They have committed their own resources to undertake this mission. So I tell you, we are ready to go anytime the order is given.
In similar line of thought, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has warned of serious consequences if the health of Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum, who has been detained since the military coup that overthrew him, deteriorates, according to European official. The official in European Union quoted Tinubu as saying during a call with the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, that the conditions of President Bazoum's detention are deteriorating and will lead to serious consequences. During a press briefing in Geneva, spokesperson for UN Human Rights Office, Ravina Shamsadin, said that UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk expresses grave concern for people of Niger and calls to General immediately restore constitutional order. Defense leaders from the West Africa's ECOWAS bloc, who began a meeting in Ghana Thursday, have agreed to activate a standby force as last resort to restore democracy in Niger after generals toppled the detained President Mohamed Bazoum last month.
UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk expresses grave concern for the people of Niger who have been forced to endure even more misery following last month's military coup. He calls on the generals to immediately restore constitutional order.
Also, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, warned that there was no legal basis for Niger's military council to prosecute deposed President Mohamed Bazoum for high treason.
We're also concerned about the announced decision by coup leaders to prosecute President Mohamed Bazoum and others working with him for high treason. This decision is not only politically motivated against a democratically elected president, but it has no legal basis, as the normal functioning of democratic institutions has been cast aside.
The political tension in Niger since the coup against President Mohamed Bazoum is worsening the economic and the social situation in the country as the population begins to feel additional burdens and an ongoing collapse of the humanitarian situation in one of the poorest countries in the world.
Due to the unrest and insecurity that have risen in Niger since the military coup in July, these individuals have been forced to flee their homes all the way to the capital, Niamey. And despite fleeing in the hopes of improved living conditions, their lives remain difficult.
We fled insecurity to come here. We're tired. Some days I find food, other days I don't find food. I left my place of residence to come here. But until now I'm tired. Some days I can't find food. Some days I can work and other days I can't work.
The situation is still very tense in the capital despite relative calm. It isn't much different for those living in Niamey. Citizens complain about the cost of living crisis that has been deteriorated by the sanctions imposed by ECOWAS. Niger is considered one of the poorest countries in the world, with nearly half of its population mired into poverty. The UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, expressed grave concerns for the people of Niger, calling on the generals to immediately restore constitutional order.
Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world, extremely vulnerable to climate change. The people have already been through so much hardship over the years. Now the very people who they elected to build a pathway to end their destitution have been removed by force against the constitutional order and detained by the coup leaders. They must be released at once and democracy restored.
The situation in the West African country has worsened since the recent military coup, but Nigerians reject any military intervention in their country.
I ask God not to bring ECOWAS. We lost more than 600 people. I support the military and God curse anyone who doesn't love Niger.
Nigerians fear that a possible military intervention by ECOWAS will exacerbate their economic and security conditions, while humanitarian organizations warn that sanctions and the suspension of aid will have a significant impact on people's lives.
The United Nations announced the withdrawal of its forces from the third camp in Mali. This comes as part of a plan for a complete withdrawal from the country by the end of December 2023. MINUSMA implements the Security Council's decision taken last June to end the mandate of the UN mission in Mali since 2013 as a response to Bamako's will.
The UN peacekeeping mission there confirms that a convoy carrying peacekeepers and equipment from its camp in the city of Gundam in the Timbuktu region, and as part of its withdrawal process, reached Timbuktu city without incident on Wednesday. The complex operation involved the withdrawal of personnel from the Ivorian military contingent, as well as UN police officers and a Bangladeshi formed police unit.
Still in the African continent, the Burkinabe judiciary convicted the former Minister of Transport, Finn Sant Dabilgo, the 11 years in prison, of which 7 are pending. Dabilgo, who served as a minister between the years of 2018 and 2022, during the presidential term of Christian Kabore, who was overthrown in coup in January 2022, was convicted of theft of public funds, money laundering and secret financing of political party. The penalty imposed on the former Burkinabe minister also includes the suspension of the activities of his party, the New Era of Democracy, and the payment of a fine of 3.3 billion African francs, or about 4.7 million euros. Authorities has announced on Friday that at least 5 Nigerian soldiers were killed in an armed battle by the Boko Haram terrorist group on a military convoy that was patrolling near the border with the Cameroon. According to the same source, the attack took place on Thursday afternoon outside the town of Gwaza near the Mandara Mountains when the gunmen opened fire on the vehicles of the convoy, which was also hit by a mine that passed it by. The situation in the Eastern Republic of the Congo has topped the work of the 43rd regular summit of the Southern African Development Community, which is continuing for the second day in a row in the Angolan capital, Luanda, with the participation of the heads of the state and government of the 16 members. The Congolese President Felix affirmed that he is confident in the capabilities of his country's armed forces in eliminating all terrorist threats in the Congo.
Will therefore receive reports.
É também importante destacar aqui
It is necessary to focus today on the most important security challenges in our region, such as the situation in the east of the Republic of Congo. And as you can see, we are making joint efforts in this sense.
Le peuple congolais garde tout de même
The Congolese people hold this hope and this confidence in their armed forces to defeat the enemy. We praise the support provided by the UN peacekeeping forces to Congo, and we hope that it will be effective.
In the neighboring Tunisia, President Kais Saied has emphasized state unity and the necessity of coordinating the actions of all its institutions, stressing that the state will not remain idle and will fight all monopolists and speculators, pointing to the bread crisis prevailing in the country, which he described as a fabricated one, while sharing a working session with Prime Minister Ahmed Al-Hashani and the Ministers of Interior, Finance and Social Affairs. Kais Saied said that some parties are fabricating other crises in number of basic consumer goods, noting that the state will endeavor to purify the administration, as he put it.
They assume their responsibility. If anyone attempts to make people starve or create a crisis with the approach of the beginning of the school and university year, they will be faced up with the law, of course. We won't leave our people or children or our students in all the establishments as an easy target to those people. Thank God the people is aware and knows very well the reality of things and will face up to all of them. Of course, there is a group of traitors and agents internally who try to tarnish Tunisia's image. If they had a minimum of nationalism, they wouldn't speak this way. A bunch of persons cannot make the whole population starve. We have a strong state with strong institutions.
The Algerian National Gendarmerie in the western province of Mustaghanem has announced the dismantling of the main unit of an international cross-border criminal network that is active in importing, transporting and promoting drugs within the framework of an international group organized from France and then Spain towards Algeria. According to a statement, the network consists of 12 individuals. 7 of its members were arrested and the identity of the rest was identified, in addition to the seizure of significant amounts of hard drugs represented in one part 3 kilograms of cocaine, 35,000 of hallucinogenic tablets and some of money in both national and foreign currencies.
As part of the fight against all types of crime, including dealing psychotropic and hallucinogen tablets, and according to proven information provided to the territorial unit of the National Gendarmerie in Mustaghanem, providing for the existence of an international transborder criminal network, operating in the import, transport and dealing of drugs as part of an international organized network, from France, Spain towards Algeria. Based on the information, the territorial unit of the National Gendarmerie in Mustaghanem managed to dismantle the criminal network, which is made up of 12 members, arrest 7 of them and identify the rest, in addition to the seizure of a significant amount of hard drugs.
A different matter now, the Australian Labor Party, the ruling party in Australia, called on the United Nations to organize a self-determination referendum in Western Sahara, and a recommendation approved on Friday during its conference held between the 16th to the 17th of August in the Australian city of Barsiban. The recommendation stated that the Australian Labor Party strongly supported the efforts of the United Nations aimed at enabling the people of Western Sahara to exercise their inalienable rights to self-determination in accordance with United Nations resolutions and the settlement plan for the year 1990. The permanent representative of Palestine to United Nations, Riyad al-Mansour, has urgently called upon UN officials to address the escalating violence and settler activities in occupied Palestinian territories. More in this report.
The Palestinian authorities, through its representative to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, sent a message to the United Nations bodies and institutions. In his impassioned letters to key UN figures, Ambassador Mansour underscores the dire situation where the Zionist occupation's brutal actions have grown alarmingly. The rising death toll, including 41 children this year, highlights the urgency of international accountability and protection of Palestinian rights. Recent incidents like the Jenin incursion and settlers' encroachment have fueled tensions, sparking concerns for sustainable regional peace.
41 Palestinian children were killed in 2023 alone, yet the occupation forces are still illogically removed from the list of permanent violators of children's rights, which increases their evasion of accountability.
Mansour's appeal to international community stressed the urgency of addressing this humanitarian crisis, preventing further loss of life, and finding just solution to restore peace and security in the region. The Palestinian Authority's representatives calls for a united response to end the cycle of violence and ensure a peaceful future for the Palestinian people. Settlers, supported by the extremist entity's government, are becoming complicit in the occupation forces' crimes.
The settlers who have been illegally transferred to the occupied Palestinian territory, including East al-Quds, are emboldened by the extremist entity government that is directly and indirectly aiding and abetting settler gangs and militias.
In his messages, Mansour also emphasized the mounting displacement, land confiscation, home demolition, and the expansion of settlement outposts, encroaching upon Palestinian territory.
At least 399 people were displaced as a result of settler violence, as settlers forcibly seized pastures and vineyards under the supervision of the occupation forces, which shows a settler colonial agenda aimed at ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian land from its original inhabitants, which constitutes crimes against humanity.
While the level of atrocities has reached staggering heights, the international community has yet to categorize them as crimes against humanity, necessitating accountability and effective international intervention to safeguard Palestinian rights under global laws.
A civilian cargo ship sailing from Ukraine reached Istanbul through the Bosporus Strait. The Hong Kong flagged Joseph Scholl's container ship that left the Russian-blocked Ukrainian Black Sea port of Odessa. Earlier this week had been in the port since February 23rd of 2022, the day before the start of the Russia's military operation in Ukraine. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced the downing of a Ukrainian drone that targeted Moscow and its surroundings. In a statement, the Russian Defense Ministry accused Kiev of launching a terrorist attack on targets in Moscow and its suburbs using a drone, adding that incident took place at 4 a.m. local time. The Russian defense confirmed that interception of the drone, which fell on a non-residential building in the area of Krason Priest Bridge without causing any injuries. At a press briefing today and days before BRICS summit, the spokesman of the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that BRICS mechanism has become an important force to promote global governance reform and its international influence has constantly grown. He made the statement in response to questions concerning President Xi Jinping's participation in the 50th BRICS summit and state visit to South Africa. Chinese President Xi will attend the BRICS leaders meeting and visit South Africa on August 21st until August 24th.
The coming summit is the first offline meeting of BRICS leaders over the past 3 years and more. And it also marks that the BRICS summit returns to Africa once again, after an interval of 5 years. Since its establishment, the BRICS mechanism has always adhered to the initial intention of solidarity and self-improvement, upheld the spirit of openness, inclusiveness, cooperation and win-win, continued to deepen pragmatic cooperation in various fields, and become an important force to promote global governance reform with ever-growing international influence.
China said on Friday that crossing of waters with Russian naval ships is in line with international law and norms. Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement on Friday that Russian and Chinese warships were conducting a joint maritime patrols in the Pacific Ocean involving rescue training and drills for counter-attacking airstrikes. Japan expressed concern after Chinese and Russian warships sailed close to its southern islands on Thursday. Also, China has urged for peace and stability in Asia-Pacific as leaders of the United States, South Korea and Japan gather for the Camp David summit and seek to deepen three-way military ties.
In the face of a turbulent international security situation, all parties should uphold the common concept of a security community, adhere to the true multilateralism and work together to respond to all kinds of security challenges. No country should seek its own security at the expense of the other country's security interests or at the expense of regional peace and stability.
This year's Camp David summit leaders issued a sharply worded joint statement about Beijing's actions in the South China Sea, where China has claimed territory and said it recently plans military drills. More in this report.
US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol made several pledges in a historic Camp David meeting, including an annual meeting, and issued a sharp rebuke to China, as Biden said that the summit was not about China, but that it obviously came up in the talks.
I'll just say this summit was not about China. That was not the purpose of the meeting, but it did come, China obviously came up. Not to say we don't share concerns about the economic coercion or heightened tensions caused by China, but this summit was really about our relationship with each other and deepening cooperation across an entire range of issues that went well beyond just the immediate issues we raised.
Earlier on Friday, China renewed its criticism of the Trilateral Summit, saying that no country should seek its own security at the expense of other countries' security interests, as well as regional peace and stability.
The Asia-Pacific region is a promising land for peace and stability and cooperation and development, and should not become a dueling ground for geopolitical rivalry. Attempts to form various exclusive groups and cliques and to bring bloc confrontation into the Asia-Pacific region are unpopular and will definitely spark vigilance and opposition in the countries of the region.
This year's Camp David summit seeks to further tighten security and economic ties between Japan and South Korea, two nations whose historically frosty relations have rapidly thawed over the last year as they share similar concerns about North Korea's persistent nuclear threats and China's provocations in the Pacific.
And from China to Japan, where over 100 protesters gathered on Friday in front of the Japanese Prime Minister's office, opposing the government's decision to release wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant.
Tachin is a group which gather in this Fukushima beach to collect seawater before carrying the containers back to a laboratory. Since the nuclear meltdown of 2011, the group members have tracked falling levels of radiation in everything from food and fish to seawater. The alarm has been raised here after Japan planned to discharge treated radioactive water from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima plant into the ocean.
With the help from nature, it took 12 years for the radiation level to fall. The people of Fukushima have endured the last 12 years, and it has been confirmed that the radiation level has dropped. But if radioactive materials are released into the ocean now, it will again bring back the tragedy of 12 years ago.
Anxiety has reached the Japanese streets. They were 100 who gathered in front of the office of the Japanese Prime Minister. They wanted to raise their voice against the government's decision to release wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, raising banners, some reading "Don't nuke the Pacific."
Dumping the nuclear contaminated water is intolerable. Fukushima's fishermen will also face the danger of losing their livelihoods.
I don't believe what the government said at all. It's very dangerous. The water contains various radioactive substances. It will become a serious problem once it's released into the ocean. We won't be able to eat fish anymore.
Japan's neighbor, China, isn't happy about Tokyo's decision. Beijing urged Tokyo to stop pushing forward the discharge plan.
China once again urges the Japanese side to address the legitimate concerns of the international community and the people of Japan to stop pushing forward the discharge plan, and instead fully consult with neighboring countries in a sincere manner and handle the contaminated water in a responsible way under strict international supervision.
Japan says it will remove most radioactive elements from the water. This hasn't satisfied some who say that they fear it may contaminate their food.
With this news, we reach the end of our news bulletin. Thank you so much for being with us. Good night.